Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We're just completing our discussions with the federal government at the Softwood Summit that we held this morning. I'd like to begin by thanking the federal representatives, the ministers and MPs who showed up this morning to discuss this crucially important issue for British Columbians. Our softwood sector is foundational to British Columbia. It is one of the largest employers, one of the biggest contributors to our provincial GDP. And when you look across the country, it's larger than the automotive sector. It's larger than aluminum and steel combined. It has an impact right across the country, and it deserves to be treated with the seriousness and respect that a sector of that size should command. I am confident in saying, coming out of this meeting, that the federal government understands that. We spent a lot of the meeting talking about the importance of this sector to communities large and small across the province. And ministers shared their own reflections on the impact of the industry in their home jurisdictions. And we have a shared commitment to work together to address the crisis that the sector faces. The unfair and unjustified tariffs imposed by the White House on this sector directly threatens thousands of jobs right across the country. And our deep concern is that without imminent action, that things will get significantly worse for families and for communities across the country, and particularly in British Columbia. Coming out of the meeting, we've agreed to a table of deputy ministers, senior deputy ministers within the federal government and provincial government, and senior representatives from the political level at a task force, a working group, to work, and we're talking about in a period of weeks, not months, on supports for the sector. We put forward a number of specific proposals to the federal government. We discussed those proposals in detail this morning. We heard from the senior representatives of the labor movement as well. And we have received a commitment from the federal government, a very positive response to that, to work with us on ensuring that we're delivering that. We are going to remain unified and together on communications, on strategy, so that British Columbians and Canadians know that the federal government and the provincial government are in their corner, are standing up for them, and are speaking with one voice on this. And so I want to thank Minister LeBlanc in particular for the leadership that he's shown on this file, Minister MP Nur Mohammed for helping facilitate, bringing us together, and all of the representatives here for taking this as seriously as it deserves, and working with British Columbia on this. With that, I'll turn it over to Minister LeBlanc.
So, Premier, thank you. And it was a privilege for me and 4 of my cabinet colleagues, 2 parliamentary colleagues, to be here with you, Premier, and your cabinet colleagues to talk about the importance of the softwood lumber sector, obviously in British Columbia, massively important to the GDP of this province, but it is to the country as well. So I was able to update the Premier on the negotiations with the United States, on the conversations we had previously with the Americans. Obviously, softwood lumber continues to be something that we had been raising with the Americans. And I committed to the Premier, obviously, that we would work with him and colleagues when and if those negotiations resume in the short term to ensure that we're buckled up. At the same time, as the Premier said, we're not going to wait because the hour is grave, the moment is serious for us to continue to work together and to adjust and to increase the supports that the province and the government of Canada can put in place together to support the sector and the women and men who work in British Columbia and in every part of the country in this important industry. This is a critical industry to the fabric of the whole country. We see British Columbia, of course, as a dominant player in Canada in this industry. That's why we thought it was important for us to hear directly from the Premier, from his government, and from representatives of the workers in the industry. But we will, as a national government, of course, be having conversations with other partners across the country as we quickly put together measures that will support this sector in British Columbia and across the country as we face these unjustified American tariffs. Si vous me permettez juste de dire quelques mots en français, reconnaissant que la conversation que nous avons eue avec le premier ministre Eby et ses ministres ici en Colombie-Britannique sur les enjeux du secteur du bois d'œuvre s'applique à toutes les régions du Canada. Moi, je pense aux travailleurs dans les régions du Québec, comme chez moi au Nouveau-Brunswick, et partout au Canada, qui sont inquiets évidemment avec les tarifs douaniers américains et qui s'attendent que leur gouvernement, comme nous avons fait dans le passé et comme nous allons continuer de faire, s'attendent que leur gouvernement, au pluriel, parce que nous sommes très chanceux d'avoir des partenaires au niveau provincial pour appuyer les travailleurs et les industries forestières à travers le Canada. Alors, avec le premier ministre Eby, nous avons eu une discussion quant aux mesures nécessaires à court terme et à long terme d'appuyer le secteur forestier, les travailleurs dans l'industrie du bois d'œuvre, et on s'est engagé d'apporter des mesures supplémentaires au cours des prochaines semaines. Mais évidemment, ce seront des mesures et des appuis qui vont s'appliquer à travers le pays parce qu'on reconnaît l'importance de ce secteur pour tous les coins du Canada. So thank you, Premier, for the opportunity.
Thanks, Minister. We're happy and keen to take questions from our friends in the media.
We will get to as many questions as we can today, starting in the room and then the phone with Richard Zussman, Global News.
Premier, for you and Minister LeBlanc, the Prime Minister was in BC in the summer. He announced significant money, and we were told last month that none of that money had been doled out yet for the forestry sector. I understand some of it is coming now, but how can people in the industry take this seriously considering it took so long to start getting that money flowing? And have you gotten anywhere on provisions around EI for those in the sector who may lose their jobs and could potentially be fast-tracked like was done for those in some of the sectors that are important in Ontario?
Thanks. The working group that we're establishing is going to do a couple of key things. First of all, they're going to make sure that the forest sector in British Columbia has access to the programs that have been announced, been implemented by the Government of Canada. One of the items that was noted was that there are some opportunities on the federal table that BC companies have not applied to take advantage of yet. So we're to make sure that that's fast tracks. We're able to access those resources immediately for the forest sector. The other thing is to make sure that we're working together on what additional resources will be brought to bear. The forest sector is incredibly diverse in BC, from little tiny mom and pop shops to great big internationally traded companies. And so making sure that there are supports in place, and that was what we were pitching today, supports in place to respond to that diversity and support workers, keep the industry intact, and make sure that the whole organ system that supports the body of the timber industry here is functioning well through this incredibly difficult time as we pivot to new markets is crucially important. And so we're very hopeful to be able to see that implemented as quickly as possible. One of the representatives at the table was Business Development Bank of Canada. They are responsible for allocating the lending measures that were set out by the Prime Minister, and we got an update from them that money is rolling out. For us, the message is always the same. We need to see a fair representation of BC companies and individuals benefiting from these federal programs on a per capita basis, or according to the industry, obviously the softwood industry, a significant part of BC's economy. We need to see a significant part of that federal support showing up here in the province. Minister LeBlanc.
Premier, thank you. I think just to underscore what the Premier said, we don't disagree, I think, with anything that he just asserted, and also recognize the urgency of the moment. We took stock, and maybe my colleague Tim Hodgson may want to add something. We took stock of the work that the BC government is already doing with the sector in this province, and we're very quickly ensuring that the Government of Canada is the most effective and reliable partner to the province of BC in getting those federal supports that the Prime Minister announced a few months ago out the door in the most efficient and effective way. but are obviously open to working with the sector and the provinces, plural, to ensure that in every region of the country, we're hitting the target. We have a much better sense from our positive conversation with the Premier and his government today in British Columbia. So we'll be the best and most reliable, effective partner with the government of BC in this area. Tim, did you want to add? Alors, en français, nous comprenons l'urgence du moment. Nous reconnaissons, comme le Premier ministre Eby a bien dit, que l'heure est grave, il faut agir vite. Le Premier ministre Carney a annoncé déjà à la fin de l'été des mesures pour appuyer l'industrie. Ici, en Colombie-Britannique, on va s'assurer que les compagnies et les travailleurs sont au premier plan d'avoir accès à ces programmes fédéraux. Mais en même temps, comme le Premier ministre a dit, nous allons s'assurer, on va répéter ce travail-là dans d'autres régions du Canada, on va s'assurer que les mesures sont ciblées, qui rencontrent le besoin régional ici en Colombie-Britannique, et on va faire la même chose au Québec comme dans toutes les régions du Canada.
Yeah, as was said, there's $700 million of liquidity support that's being set up. It's now available to all of the companies in the sector. With Minister Parmar, we talked about how to make sure BC got its full and fair share of that $700 million of liquidity support. There's an additional $500 million available to help companies retool and prepare for the world where we're trying to grow our exports beyond just the United States. Minister Parmar and myself had some very good discussions about how we make sure, again, BC gets its full and fair share of that $500 million. And we also have started a discussion around what are the other things that we can be doing together to help strengthen local industry here in British Columbia so that it can sell not just to our friends south of the border, but more extensively all over the world.
Follow-up, Richard?
Yeah, for the Premier, property tax expert Paul Sullivan says he's launching what's called a mass property tax appeal to BC assessment. Concerns around the impact the Cowichan Lands decision will have on property values in Richmond. What do you say to homeowners in Richmond who are incredibly concerned about their home values due to the decision? And what do you make of this potential appeal around the way that BC assessment, which is operated by the province, values people's homes in that area?
Yeah, thanks, Richard. Obviously, this is a moment of huge anxiety for homeowners that are in the claim area, as well as business owners that have land in this area. The court decision, the court assured us that they would make a decision that didn't affect landowners in the claim area, so they didn't have to be served. They didn't have to be told about the case, that it was going ahead in court. Unfortunately, that obviously turned out not to be the case. So one of the pieces of information that we're seeking to gather is from property owners in the area. If they're running into impacts that are related to financing or other related issues, it's helpful for us to know. We're applying to the court for something called a stay, which is a pause and a stop on the decision until the Court of Appeal has a chance to consider that. That's important evidence for the court to be able to hear. I understand why people are anxious. I would be anxious. But I want to reassure people we are going to court. We're bringing forward any information that we have. Currently, to date, we don't have information that banks are reluctant to loan in relation to these properties. And it would be helpful for us if that is in fact the case to be able to get that information from homeowners. People still own their properties. You still are able to sell your properties. But the uncertainty, I recognize, is a serious issue, and we need to resolve that as quickly as possible, which is why we've been expediting our work at the Court of Appeal to be able to get there.
Next up, Corentin Mattet, CBC Radio Canada.
Hi, this is a question for Premier Eby. Do you feel that right now BC has its fair share of the federal government's help?
Well, I'll be blunt. It has been incredibly difficult to hear that the topics being discussed with the United States are energy, aluminum, and steel. These are core industries, and I don't want to take anything away from other provinces where they are core industries, but they're core industries of other provinces. And we have an aluminum smelter, but with some support, they can quickly pivot to international markets. For us, it's the softwood sector. And softwood is to British Columbia as auto parts and steel are to Quebec and Ontario. And just hearing again and again that those were the topics being discussed federally with the Americans was challenging. I think that as of today, I feel much more confident. The federal government understands the severity of the crisis facing the sector, the impact of the industry across the province and across the country, and the need to be more involved. I feel that we're on the same team now, pushing forward, and that is huge for families in the province that are dependent on softwood, communities in the province that are dependent on that. And there's no one individual, I think, that I would say has failed to prioritize softwood. In fact, I know that Minister LeBlanc comes from a province where softwood is a huge industry. I know that this is driven by the Americans and what they want to talk about. But for us in BC, we need to hear softwood. We need to hear that it's being pushed. There's more than $8 billion sitting in a bank account of tariffs that could be used to resolve this issue with the United States once conversations begin again, which we hope they do soon. And in the meantime, we can't be purely reactive to the U.S. We have to be pivoting to international markets. And with a strong federal partner, we're going to be able to access those international markets and drive lumber around the world, but also hopefully nationally. We'd love to sell more lumber to Ontario, just like they'd like to sell more steel to us. And the cost of transportation is one of the things we talked about at the table today. How do we make sure that that happens? Mr. LeBlanc?
Again, we had, I think, a conversation with Premier Eby and his cabinet colleagues that gave us an even better understanding of the economic importance of this sector to British Columbia. My colleagues who are with me from British Columbia talk to us about this often. The Prime Minister, as your colleague noted, was here at the end of the summer. But even in 2 months, the situation has evolved so that we need to work closely with the industry, the government of British Columbia, and other partners across the country to support the sector. I think I was able to describe to the Premier the nature of the conversations with the United States. We do raise the importance of coming to a negotiated agreement with the United States on softwood lumber when we talk to them. As you know, those conversations have been suspended. When we get back to the negotiating table, obviously we'll continue to push for a negotiated settlement, but we're not in a position to wait for either the outcome of those negotiations or even for those negotiations to resume. We want to work collaboratively with the sector and the government of British Columbia and other governments to ensure that the supports are in place. So when these issues are resolved or attenuated, we have a softwood lumber sector that's competing around the world successfully and employing tens of thousands of people in communities big and small right across the country. Vous êtes chanceux, là, vous avez quelqu'un qui peut prendre vos questions. Moi, on a eu une discussion productive, constructive, amicale avec le Premier ministre Eby et ses ministres. On a pris le constat de l'urgence du moment ici en Colombie-Britannique, comme le Premier ministre a très bien indiqué. Nous nous sommes mis d'accord sur l'idée de travailler ensemble sur une base accrue, expédiée pour apporter d'autres mesures de soutien. Nous avons pris constat des mesures qui sont déjà en place, comment assurer davantage l'accès à ces mesures du gouvernement fédéral, mais on a bon espoir qu'au cours des prochaines semaines, nous serons dans une situation d'appuyer davantage le secteur du bois d'œuvre dans toutes les régions du Canada.
Follow-up, go ahead.
Pour Monsieur Leblanc, en français encore une fois, s'il vous plaît. Là, vous venez de dire que vous venez de prendre conscience de l'urgence du moment ici en Colombie-Britannique. Jusqu'ici, le gouvernement fédéral avait surtout parlé de l'automobile, de l'aluminium. Est-ce que le gouvernement fédéral tente de rééquilibrer son soutien aux provinces avec cette annonce aujourd'hui? Et les choses well, please.
Ah, OK, vous allez inverser ça. Mais je veux pas être désagréable, mais pas pour argumenter la façon que vous avez posé la question. Nous avons toujours avancé l'idée d'arriver à un règlement avec les États-Unis sur les questions du bois d'œuvre. Le gouvernement américain nous a dit qu'on va privilégier, comme le premier ministre Carney a indiqué suite à la rencontre à la Maison-Blanche il y a 3-4 semaines, nous allons avancer sur 3 secteurs et ensuite passer à d'autres secteurs qui sont aussi dans des moments d'urgence. Alors, je veux pas que les gens aient l'impression que nous avons pas avancé et nous allons pas continuer d'avancer le besoin d'arriver à une entente avec les Américains sur le bois d'œuvre. Cependant, nous allons pas attendre la reprise des discussions ou j'espère une éventuelle entente pour appuyer le secteur et s'assurer qu'on soit dans une position de continuer à concurrencier à travers le Canada. So, just very briefly, I think the Premier said it well. The softwood lumber sector is critical to the economy of the whole country. It's critical to the economy of British Columbia, but it's important in communities big and small right across the country. I think it's important for people to understand that we continually raise the importance of having a negotiated agreement, and the Premier identified some possible pistes de solution, some possible opportunities for a negotiated agreement with the United States. We agreed that we would continue to be in close contact with Premier Eby and his government when those conversations resume. That is the best way to ensure the long-term confidence in the sector. But we don't need to relearn the same lesson multiple times. We have an opportunity now with a partner government in British Columbia to ensure that we're doing everything necessary, short, medium, and long term, to support the thousands of women and men in this sector and the innovative companies, big and small, right across the country. So we're going to do both at the same time. Sorry, David.
Before we go to the next question, I want to note we have a hard stop of 11:15 today. Up next is Monica Gull, City News.
A question for Minister LeBlanc. BC is set to roll out its own sort of anti-tariff ads targeting the U.S. Given the reaction after Ontario did its own ads, the talks with the U.S. have stopped right now. The ads were pulled. Are there any concerns that the federal government has with BC doing its own ads? Is this something that maybe the two of you spoke about today? And did you maybe even ask BC to rethink rolling out those ads?
Thanks. I'll start this one. We did have a conversation about the advertisements today. And, you know, one of the things that was crucial for me to communicate was that we needed an integrated, coordinated approach with the provincial and the federal government. And one of the things that I heard Minister LeBlanc say is that for his side, he wanted an integrated approach between the federal and the provincial government. That means that going forward, we're going to ensure that our communications are in line. When the time comes to speak with Americans, we'll do it in partnership with the federal government. My belief is now that the province is not going it alone on softwood, that we have a strong partner here that's going to work with us to ensure that whatever the tactic is that's taken around negotiation with the Americans, whatever the tactic is that's taken around supporting workers and businesses, we're going to be doing it together. This is a shift in our policy in BC, and it's a recognition of the efforts that have been made. And I want to thank Minister LeBlanc, Minister Hodgson, Mr. Robertson for your leadership on this, and the Prime Minister to come to the table, for us to sit down, be frank with each other about where we've been frustrated, where the opportunities are, and how we're going to work together going forward.
You've just answered it. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, follow up. So 2 in 1, if I can get clarification then, so those ads are not going next month. And as my follow up, BC Conservatives say that your government is a bit to blame for the current situation. It's pointing to red tape, policy decisions. It's pointing out that the BC did not hit its annual allowable cut last year, and it's on track to not hit it this year either. Response to criticism from the Conservatives.
Yeah, I think one of the big challenges we face in the softwood sector is something called timber that's economic to harvest. That is it cost effective for a company to be able to harvest a particular permitted stand of trees? That's a bit technical, but the challenges with the tariffs, and for just one example, one Canadian forest company operates in British Columbia, faced a 54% tariff. So when you have a 54% tariff at the border, the trees that it makes sense to move all the way into the mill to manufacture, and then move to the United States, that group of trees shrinks, even if they're permitted, even if they're ready to go. We have, in Campbell River, for example, 3 million cubic meters of timber that's permitted, ready to go. But in the current economic situation with the United States, it doesn't make sense to harvest. So these are big challenges. We know also that we have to be faster on permitting, and we're doing that work as well. But tariffs of between 45 and 54% higher than what Russia faces to access the U.S. market, completely unfair, unjustified, and profoundly challenging for the sector. On the advertisements, we've committed to the federal government that when the time comes to be speaking directly to Americans, we'll do it in partnership with them. We will not be running the ads by ourselves. We'll make sure that we're in line with strategy going forward. And that is a recognition on our part of the efforts that were made today around the table for us to work together as a team, integrated provincial and federal government, with our table, focusing on the future of the industry, how we reduce our dependence on the United States, and the present of the industry, how we support those workers and businesses to be able to survive and ultimately to thrive in a new environment.
To the phones next, Rob Shaw, Check News.
Can I just follow that up? Can I ask Mr. LeBlanc to speak on the ads issue? Did you ask the Premier on behalf of the Prime Minister not to run the anti-American softwood lumber ads?
Minister LeBlanc didn't have to ask. I knew that it was a source of anxiety for many people, including potentially the federal government, given the reaction to the Ontario tariffs. One of my commitments to the federal government was that if they came to the table with us, if they sat with us, that we would work with them on communications, on strategy, on how to support the sector and how to move forward. And that was the commitment that we made, to work together in good faith as partners on this. And I was, to say pleasantly surprised is probably a bit of an understatement, but I was pleasantly surprised at the group that you see behind me, the group of ministers that showed up, the Business Development Bank of Canada, the commitment from the Prime Minister to work with us. This was very heartening to me. Felt like we were going it alone there for a while. And to know that we've got this federal team in our corner is hugely helpful to me, and resulted in our commitment to work forward in terms of any communications with Americans, with the federal government. I'll turn it over to Minister LeBlanc.
Premier, thank you. I don't think I can add anything. The Premier, I think, just answered the question in a very fulsome way. I think, Premier, if perhaps we could share with people that you and I spoke on Friday evening and again Saturday evening, and it was a focus on different innings of the ball game. There were occasional profanities in text messages as different innings came up. That was the nature of our conversation on the weekend, so now the secret's out.
Follow up, Rob?
I'm tempted to ask more about that, but I won't. I'll just go back to the... Okay, good. Premier, back to the Richmond property tax appeal case. One of the requests is that maybe the BC government could waive the school tax, which is a component of the property tax on some of these properties. Do you have any interest in doing that?
Look, this is a hugely stressful time for these families that own these homes in the claim area, and rightly so. They didn't know, many of them, about that this case was even happening, and then they learned from the mayor about potential implications for their title, and so, I just want to reassure those families and individuals that we're doing all we can to seek a stay at the Court of Appeal to ensure those arguments are put forward at the Court of Appeal. This is important work that we're doing. BC assessment is independent of government for a reason. If there are impacts on valuations, they have the ability both to reflect that in their assessments and to adjust based on appeals from homeowners based on a change in circumstances. They would be best placed to consider any impacts. To this point, we're not aware of banks making any decisions that they won't finance in mortgages or otherwise in the claim area. In fact, we've heard assurances to the contrary from at least one bank. So in terms of people who may be facing these kinds of impacts, please bring forward that information to the provincial government. It'll assist us in designing our response to this evolving situation that we face.
That's all the time we have. Thanks for joining.
What did Ronald Reagan say about
it.